if I'm getting enough people to walk through the door, I'm getting interest, I'm just not getting the sale. To me, that's an easier one to fix. Now, if you started pitching things and you're not even getting people to listen to your pitch or take their hour, 30 minutes out of the day to listen to your pitch, I'm not talking about your relatives and your friends, right? I'm talking about these complete strangers. Then you just don't have a good...
Hello. Welcome to another Knowledge Bomb episode of Lead to Greatness, where we believe in helping others reach their greatest potential and together change the world. Today on Lead to Greatness, we have Srikant Chellappa. If this is your first time joining us, please consider subscribing and hit that notification bell and hit that like button. This will be greatly appreciated in helping getting out this content to great leaders and great individuals like yourself. Sri is the president and co-founder of Engagely, a people plus strategy software that helps leaders build high-performance organizations. He has spent over 20 years in leading organizations in software development and consulting in the United States. With a unique background in technology, people management, health IT, film writing, directing, and producing, Sri brings a diverse set of experiences across industries and specialties to build high-performing, highly engaged teams. Please help me welcome Sri with High Performance Startup. This is Cedric Francis, and you're listening to Lead to Greatness.
Originally from India, grew up there, moved to US when I was 21 to study in my graduate program here. So as a background, I'm basically an entrepreneur, one of those immigrants who wants to go and do big things in America. I'm one of those guys.
Right.
And over the years, I've done a lot of things in life, obviously worked for corporations in the past and a lot of consulting work. And then about 10, 12 years ago, I decided to start really doing my own thing, and I worked for a startup as one of the partners. We grew that company to several $100 million in revenue. Sold that company to a private equity, and then a few years ago, I started Engagely, which is an employee engagement and performance management platform for organizations to use to help build better workplaces. So that's my background on the business side. On a side note, I have also a creative itch that I scratch from time to time. I've made several feature films, music videos. I also have a band that I play music in, and I actually run my own recording studio as well for musicians. So I'm actually speaking out of my podcast booth in the studio.
Wow.
So yeah,
Awesome.
there's a few things I do, and I'm happy to talk about any of that and all the challenges that come with trying to do too many things in life.
Yes. What do you play?
I play the drums.
Okay.
I should say I attempt to play the drums most days.
That is definitely awesome and definitely exciting. And so I want to kind of talk a little bit. You said 21 years old from India, and you come to the US. And I know definitely there had to be a lot of challenges. How did you get through those days?
The biggest barrier to me was coming to a country where I didn't know anybody. I knew zero people, exactly zero people. So there's no safety net, right? If you don't succeed, you basically have to catch the flight back home. So knowing that is a good thing and a bad thing, right? You basically are burning bridges. You're saying, I have no other option but to be successful. And that actually gives you a sense of freedom in a way, because it tells you there's only this path, right? There's no 5 different options I have. I have to do good in school. I have to get a scholarship because I didn't come with a lot of money. I came into this country with about $3,000 in my pocket, which lasted about 3 months. And then I was pretty much broke after that. So I had to figure out how to get a scholarship and work night shifts at as security and whatnot at school, and stack books at the library, whatever I needed to do to pay my bills, and try to do still good in school. That I got a fellowship. Actually was on my way to doing a PhD, and I decided that's not a path I wanted to pursue, because I love business and I wanted to go out and start making some money. So the biggest challenge was really not having a safety net, not having a community of relatives, if you will. But I made a lot of friends along the way, and I went to a graduate program in University of Memphis, where it was an international program, and only about 1/3 of the class was Americans. The other 2/3 were people from other countries. I made some really good friends from people in France and Denmark and Ukraine, and Ecuador, obviously Indians, Chinese, Taiwanese, you name it, right? There were people from all over the world, and it was a really nice melting pot in a little microcosm of America. So that was great, and we had great times together, and many of them are still great friends.
Awesome.
Some of them have moved back to their countries, some of them work in other countries, and some of them, are in America. So that was, I would say, the biggest challenge to overcome. And then obviously trying to find a job after that, right?
Yeah.
That's another huge challenge, because when you graduate, you basically have 1 year to find a job in your field. Otherwise, you have to go back too. So that's
Oh,
another big
wow.
one. So if
Ooh.
to and this was 96, I think, and the economy wasn't doing that great at that time. And I basically had to take a job that I didn't necessarily want to do. I did a major in finance and business, and I wanted to go into work essentially for investment bank or a firm in the equities and in those areas. I studied a
Mhm.
lot. I've been investing in stock market since I was in high school,
Wow.
first in India and then in the US. But I ended up taking a job in technology because I knew technology. I'm an undergraduate in engineering and technology, so I took a job in technology, and eventually I realized, at my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. I like
Mm.
to invest, I like to make things and build things. So I ended up, going back to running a business, and that's exactly where I ended up landing. So,
At what point did you decide? What happened? The thought in your mind said, "You know what? Entrepreneurship is the way I want to go."
well, at first I wanted to work for a startup.
Mhm.
Back in when the internet was really taking off in 96, 97.
Mm.
Amazon had just gone public, and I had applied for a job at Amazon at the time. Nobody would have applied for a job at Amazon, at least not anybody in Middle America would have. But I was in Memphis, and I applied for a job, and I didn't get the job. I was pretty disappointed about that. And if I had the job, I probably made a ton of money, because their stock obviously has done great. Startups have always intrigued me because of the challenge they have. And if you do really well, it's a big payoff. And if you don't do, you learn the lesson and take it to your next gig that you do.
Yeah.
I think what was a light bulb moment for me was 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was stuck in a hotel in Walt Disney World. I was doing a project for Walt Disney World. I was working on their online reservation system platform. I was
Mm.
designing it for them as part of my engagement at that time, and I was one of the architects on that software. And I realized, it's like a wake up moment. You could die any day,
Mm.
and you only live once a lifetime. So
Mm.
I'm like, this is my life. I got to make the best I can. And there was a
Yeah.
light bulb movement, and I got stuck in Florida. I couldn't leave for a week. And it was like a week's vacation I didn't ask for, because you can fly. All the flights were canceled coming back to St. Louis at that time, and which is where I live. And that was a moment, and I was like, I'm going to really pursue my dream. So my dream at that point was to make movies and do something creatively, and that's what really triggered my journey into the things that are not something that you typically think about as a corporate American citizen, if you will.
Mm.
And I started making movies, and then entrepreneurship was it's still an entrepreneurial activity, making a movie,
Mm.
because you got to go and convince investors to fund your film. Obviously, I didn't know anything about making a movie, so I actually had to take some evening courses and a lot of online training and reading a lot of books, and
Mm.
picked up a camera and made a lot of network with a lot of people. So that's basically what got me into thinking about entrepreneurship. And eventually, when I got financially secure enough, I could take bigger chances with actually starting companies. There are good days and there are bad days,
Mm.
and there are good months, there are good weeks, there are bad weeks, there are bad months. And you just had to look at the long game. One thing that there are two types of entrepreneurs, actually, I'll say,
Mm.
who don't succeed. One of them, who don't see results, they make these huge plans, like, next year I'm going to do $1 million in business, and 3 years from now I'll make $5 million in business. Anybody can be a millionaire or a billionaire on Excel,
Mm.
but to do it in real life is a completely different story. And then they get
Mm.
disappointed because 6 months down the road, all they've done is got two clients and making $10,000,
Yeah.
or whatever the number is, right? And they quit, they get dejected and they quit. The other type of entrepreneur is that they run with that idea, which has not been proven, but they're so dogmatic about that idea that they cannot get their head out of that idea, and they
Mm.
keep running with that idea for years and years and years. It's almost like dragging a dead body along, right?
Mm.
And they don't know when to quit. So there's two extremes, right? One is you quit too soon. The other extreme is you don't know when to quit. The
Mm.
entrepreneur who succeeds is in the middle. You need to know when to quit if an idea is not working, and maybe move on to a different idea or do something else.
Yeah.
Or the other one is knowing that directionally this idea is fine, but I need to make some tweaks. I need to improve, and I need to keep going and learn from what's not working,
Uh,
and then be humble about saying, this is not working. Maybe I should try something different. And eventually you will figure it out. If you persevere long enough, you will figure it out. Anybody who's willing to persevere, make tweaks, make tweaks, will figure it out. It's a long game. It literally is. To think that you will be a successful businessman, whatever endeavor you're in a couple of years, I think is a fool's errand, to be
mm,
honest. I really think a good business to be successful, somewhat successful, could take 7 years, 6, 7 years, easy.
mm.
I don't think there are lucky people who luck out in a year, couple of years, like
Yeah.
Instagram did, for example. But not every business is Instagram. That's why you read those stories.
What are some tweaks that you had to make that you can think of right now that you had to make early on in your entrepreneur journey?
Yeah, so I'll talk about Engagedly, right, which is our software company for
Mhm.
employee engagement. We've got 400 odd clients in 30 countries, doing fairly well. Obviously, there's always things we can do better, but we named the company Engagedly because we were building an employee engagement platform to build communities within organizations, so people feel connected within a company. I have friends, I have a social network within the organization, right? It's like
Mhm.
this little virtual social network within the organization,
Mm.
and that was our go-to-market value proposition, and that's the platform we built. Sounds great, right? What company wouldn't want to have engaged employees who build communities within the organization? They are giving each other high five,
Mm.
they're sharing their vacation photos with each other, things like that, right?
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Mm.
Nobody wanted to pay for it. None of the HR leaders or the managers. We sold to. For 7 months, I demoed the platform to at least, I want to say, 150 companies,
Wow.
maybe. I didn't close a single deal, not one,
Wow.
right? I was thinking, what am I doing here? I could have I could have had a cushy job in corporate America or do something completely different. But then I realized there was some other piece of my platform that they were really interested in, which was employee performance reviews, which obviously not something that you think of, something that employee engagement realm. But we had a piece of employee performance reviews because we said, okay, why don't we put that in the platform too? Because that can drive engagement. So we had a very, very rudimentary tool for doing that.
Mm.
But I had a lot of interest in that. So we pivoted. We heard what the market told us, and we pivoted to building a very robust and effective performance management and a learning
Mm.
management platform, coupled with these social tools that made it more interesting to organizations. Now they're like, it's not about performance, it's about driving performance. It's about engaging your people, developing your people, and then driving their performance by making them more emotionally engaged. So we actually that became our story
Mm.
for our organization. So eventually, that's how we ended up being more successful. And then within the first month of making that pivot, we closed 4 deals.
Wow.
And then the first year after that, we closed 45 clients. So that was,
Amazing.
so that was. I mean, I guess I lucked out. In some ways, I was tuned to the right frequencies because
Yeah.
there are all these different frequencies coming from different directions
Absolutely.
from different
Yeah.
clients. So I honed in on this frequency that I thought could work, and we were lucky that it worked.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have lost another year in this process.
Wow. 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 I love it. I love it. And I want you to speak to that because we have entrepreneurs right now that they have this idea, it's this is my baby. This is my baby. This is my idea. But like you said, the idea is not working. I want you to talk to that individual that maybe they haven't quite made that shift yet, and they're really just thinking like it's gonna work, it's gonna work, it's gonna work because they don't want to shift the idea to what the people want.
The way to think about it is, what problem that I am trying to solve for my buyer, assuming you know who your buyer are. That's a bigger problem
Yeah.
sometimes. So you don't know who your buyers are.
Mm.
I'm talking about the exact psychographic. Are your buyers single mothers? Are your buyers, athletic men? Are your buyers HR people? Are your buyers a CFO? All they
Mm.
have very different buying patterns, right?
Yeah.
For what you build, do you know who your buyers are? And to those buyers, are you really? What problem are you solving that is not currently being solved as effectively? Sometimes it is being solved, maybe not as effectively. And then the third thing is, or I find out if that's something they're willing to pay for it, right?
Mm.
So if you can answer those questions in affirmative, and the only way to answer that in affirmative is actually to do it and see if somebody's willing to pay for it,
Yeah.
and actually paying for it. So that's, to me, that's the way to think about it. Understand your buyer. Actually, the word is empathy. Really, you need to have the empathy for the buyer.
Yeah.
To
Mm.
empathize from their perspective, to be able to be in their shoes, to see if that's something is a problem that they want somebody to solve. And sometimes they may not know, the buyer may not themselves know it's a problem until you surface it, and then they realize it's a problem.
Mm. When you were dealing with that and had that moment, 150 clients, that's a lot of clients to not get one lead out of that. So how did you keep from getting discouraged when you fell at something in that situation, or even right now?
Oh, I did get discouraged.
Mm.
I got very discouraged many times. There were very sad days in my basement at that time. I think what encouraged me is
Mm.
that the fact that they were still willing to hear my pitch showed me there was something there that they wanted to at least somewhat willing to pay for. I just hadn't honed in on that yet. So if I was not able to get any audience, I would be like, okay, there's something really wrong with this problem,
Yeah.
or the problem I'm trying to solve. The fact that I got people on the call, they spent an hour with me when I'm giving them a product demo, and then they didn't come back with any order, or they didn't want it, or whatever it was. Many of them would just simply ghost you. The fact that I could continue to get that into my calls, into my discussions, I started thinking that as my user research.
Mm.
Essentially, that's what I'm doing. If I'm getting enough people to walk through the door, I'm getting interest, I'm just not getting the sale. To me, that's an easier one to fix. Now, if you started pitching things and you're not even getting people to listen to your pitch, or take their hour, 30 minutes out of the day to listen to your pitch, I'm not talking about your relatives and your friends, right? I'm talking about these
Yeah.
complete strangers.
Yeah.
Then you just don't have a good value proposition or a good message around your offering.
Okay, so now we have got past that. Now we know who our audience is. We know their problem, and we're solving their problem, and they're paying for it. So we got past that point. And so now the business is beginning to grow. It's beginning to grow, and now it's growing bigger than you and who you ever. If you started with someone that started a solopreneur, now you're at the point where it's like, okay, I need to get people, but then you're getting people, and at that moment you're trying to hire someone. You're still not at the point where the company is totally funded. So as a leader of an unfunded team, how can you hire and motivate that team?
Yeah, the person who makes the founder successful is the second person, not the founder himself,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the second person who believes in their mission, takes it forward. So you got to buy them into your vision, into your mission, into being authentic in
Mm-hmm.
that sense, letting them know, hey, listen, this is a risky venture, may or may not work out, but hopefully, if it doesn't work out, you'll come out learning about something on how to run a business or how not to run a business. So they're, to some extent, also semi-entrepreneurial in that sense. So that's the kind of mindset you want to attract, who are thinking like an entrepreneur, or who want a mission to work with and not just be a cog in the wheel. So finding those people is not something you can find necessarily by making a job post on LinkedIn, Indeed, or wherever. These are people you will serendipitously meet through your interactions. And that's how I met a lot of the people we ended up hiring. The first set. Obviously, after that, it becomes more of an organization. So we are hiring more people after that. But the first set you hire, you cannot make mistakes in that, because that can totally sink you, to be honest. And that comes through. You just feel it and you know it. There's no formula that I can give you. You just know it when you see that person. It's kind of like finding your spouse, I guess, in many ways, right?
Yeah, that is definitely a knowledge bomb for us. That is some knowledge for us to think about. So when you're starting out in the beginning, what should an entrepreneur be thinking about? I mean, what type of person, maybe the character of the individual or the drive? I mean, what should we be thinking about?
If you talk to the individual and they get really excited about that idea, and they
Mm.
start giving you feedback and start contributing to that idea and making that idea bigger, then you are on a good path with that person.
Mm.
The second thing is, The other person is so motivated by that idea that they want to be part of that journey, right? They want to be part of the team because now they're sold on the team's mission and the idea. They're like, I want to be part of this team.
Yeah.
It's not about money at that point.
Yeah.
I want to I want to get paid enough so that I'm not on the street. I can put bread on the table and not get divorced or whatever the situation they're in. But at least I know I'll just make enough money so I don't have to worry about that. But I want to be part of this team, and because I believe in this. And sometimes they want to work for the David and not the Goliath because they want to be part of the David's team because it's a greater satisfaction to beat the Goliath,
Yes.
and then to be the Goliath and beat the David, right? Because they want to be part of that team.
Yeah.
Sometimes you want to root for the underdog because that's
Yeah.
more exciting and fun and challenging and it's fulfilling.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of person you want to get, not somebody who's playing it safe. And there's a lot of people, I meet a lot of people who are like, I wish I want to start a business. I want to start a business. And they spend saying that for next 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And before you know it, their kids are going to college and they're like, I can't because I gotta fund my kids' college,
Yeah.
or I can because I gotta save for my retirement now. I'm gonna retire in 10 years. And it's too late. You've spent your best years working for this company that you didn't feel anything
Yeah.
for other than punching the clock. So some people can never cross that chasm of taking that leap of faith, and you don't have to do it as a business as an entrepreneur yourself. You can join a starting fledgling venture and
Yeah.
feel the same thing, maybe having a little bit better safety than the entrepreneur themselves, but you can still get the same high from working in that environment.
Yeah.
And that's the person you want to be part of your team.
Because here it is, you have entrepreneurs and they have a great idea. If you can help us with this, what are some things, or maybe what did you do in that process of the beginning stage when you had the idea in your mind, you had the passion for it, but casting that vision to the individual where they understand where you're trying to go and they like, you know what, man, I want to be a part of this.
Yeah, so you highlight a problem that nobody is trying to solve, or at least not anybody visible, and you paint this vision of this is what this journey will look like. So in our case, we are going to try to disrupt the market of talent management, performance management, where it is very clunky,
Mhm.
heavy duty ERP type systems. Employees don't want to use the system. They don't feel connected to their jobs. So maybe we build a social network and have tools that employees feel connected. Now there are tools, those tools are everywhere. But
Mm.
7 years ago, there was really not a whole lot of those. So that people, I mean, we knew we needed something like that. This was before COVID, so not everybody was necessarily working remote, but now it's all more relevant than ever before. So that essentially is painting that vision would be what I would do it. For example, you can come up with any other such ideas, right? Let's say
Mhm.
your idea now is I want to make an electric car that is, maybe not as powerful, but can be bought for $25,000 or less.
Yeah.
That's a vision into itself. Now, how do you figure that out? And that's where the challenge comes in. And maybe there will be people who will be passionate about that,
Yeah.
right? And they will be like, okay, you know what? I don't want to work for GM or Ford or Tesla, whoever, and I will come and work for you. I'll take a pay cut, but let's make the reality. So I think those kind of visions type of things that you're making something that it moves, that is moving the ball forward in some way, making the world a better place. Uh, in that little microcosm, I'm not necessarily trying to solve world's hunger or anything like that, but in a way, it's doing something good for the world. I think those things can really help get people buy into your mission and move your organization forward.
Oh, Sri, that is another knowledge bomb. I love this. I love this. I want to shift a little bit because here you are. You've been in business and you shared your story from, coming from India, to America. So that's a lot of times. I believe there's a lot of times in your life throughout your journey. You shared your story, with entrepreneurship when you first started your company, and that's a sense of that's something inside of you. And I want to ask you something that may be a little personal, but I want you to share something with us on here. How do you stay motivated? How do you motivate yourself to go the extra mile when no one is looking?
A masochist, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. I like to challenge myself into
Uh-huh.
doing new things
Yeah.
So one of the things I do every year, I've been doing this for several years now, is in December, around the holiday time period, I'll take out a little note card, those note cards that you have in high school.
Mhm.
Um, I use that and I write 3 goals I'm going to do that year. And these are goals, they're not warm and fuzzy goals. It's not like some goal that you can't really measure. It'll be like, I want to be able to run a 5K under, let's say, 25 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever the number is. By the way, that's one of my goals right now this
Mhm.
year, is to run my 5K under 25 minutes, which
Wow.
looks further and further away, but I'm close. I'm 26 minutes right now. But
Wow.
the other goal I had one year was, break 100 in golf, which I barely did. I, which is uh, 100 is not that great, but somebody who's not very good at all, 100 is great.
Yeah.
And then one year was to go. I love skiing. One year was to go skiing at least 4 times in this year,
Mm.
because I kept pushing it off and pushing it off. And then obviously some of them are business related goals. One year was to make this company profitable, and I actually did that last year. So those are some of the goals I had. And then look at it on every few days, and then, are you making progress on that? Are you making progress on that? And that's
Yeah.
way of keeping yourself honest. And and when you're tired, some days you're demotivated, you're tired, it's okay to take that day off. Don't beat yourself over it, because if you beat yourself hard enough times, you will actually get really demotivated. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
just can say it's just fine, let it go. You got still the rest of the year to do it. So that's one way to do it. And it also sometimes comes down to personality. But the real truth is, you have to be honest to yourself.
Yeah.
If you say you're going to do something, you're not fooling anybody but yourself. And
Mm.
if you don't make progress towards that, and it's okay not to achieve it. All the three goals I said every year, I said I don't always achieve all those three,
Yeah.
but I make a serious attempt at it. And sometimes I do something completely different. Halfway through the year, I'll change my goal to doing something else, because that goal no longer is interesting enough for me.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're only answerable to yourself,
Yeah.
and if you can live with that, uh, by not doing it and being dishonest to yourself, you're not doing yourself any favors.
Yeah. What are some tips, tools, advice that you can share with the Lead to Greatness community to help us reach our greatest potential?
So I think leadership comes in many flavors, but there's one thing that is, I will say, true about a good leader, is they're consistent in their messaging. They don't
Mm.
change, say one thing one day, say something else the next day, say something else a third day, or they're not like always blowing with the wind. All these three leaders, by the way, which are completely different leadership, they were
Yeah.
consistent in their message. They didn't
Mm.
change their message,
Yeah.
even if they didn't were not on the right side of the truth. Now, I'm not saying you should do that. Hopefully you are on the right side of the truth, and
Right.
you're speaking from a position of honesty and authenticity.
Yeah.
But I do believe, the people look for leadership because most people, and I hate saying this, most people rather follow than lead.
Yeah.
And I think a good leader's job is to lead them in the right path.
I definitely excited to have you on the Lead to Greatness podcast, and man, really looking forward and interested in some of the things that you are doing and some of the things that you have upcoming in the future. If someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
So my startup company, I mean, it's no longer a startup anymore. It's 7 years, with 130 employees now. It's
Wow.
engagedly.com, ENGAGEDLY, engagedly.com. My name is Sri Chellappa. I could be found on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect with me and follow me. Otherwise, I have a podcast where I interview other business leaders and other thought leaders in the space of leadership and people management, called People Strategy Leaders Podcast.
On behalf of the Lead to Greatness community, I want to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thanks a lot, Cedric. Really appreciate it.
And don't forget to subscribe to Lead to Greatness if this is your first time. And if this podcast was helpful to you, leave a big thumbs up. And also, I want you to check out our Marriage Coach podcast, the podcast with my wife and I. If you're on iTunes, please rate this podcast and leave a review and help get the word out. Again, thank you, Lead to Greatness Nation, for joining us on today. Looking forward to seeing you again on next week. Till then, remember, if you help others reach their greatest potential, together we can change the world. Peace. We out.